Hey viewers, my name's Cara. I'm your host for Tuesdays here on the Pagan Perspective, and this week we're talking about coming out of the broom closet, or coming out as a pagan or a witch, in a professional setting, and the example given was if we're talking to someone like a counselor or a therapist, so someone with whom we have a professional relationship. And how does this kind of coming out of the broom closet experience differ from coming out to friends or family? So, I will begin by admitting that once again, I have just been very fortunate in my experiences in this realm, in that my counselors and my friends' counselors, whom I've heard their stories about how it went for them, have all been very professional people in that they understand that not all of the people that they help have the same beliefs as each other, nor do they necessarily have the same beliefs as the counselor themselves. And so I don't know what religion or spirituality my counselor that I had in college follows, except that I know he liked Buddhist philosophy, because he used Buddhist philosophy in a lot of what he talked with me about, and he had statues of Buddha and other Buddhist elements in his office. But I think the impression that I got from him was that he tries to know a little bit about all different spiritual approaches, knowing that that's the best way to help his clients, because if the thing that you're trying to frame your entire conversation with someone around is not what they believe, then it's not going to be very helpful to them. And this is why a lot of people who are non-Christian based or who don't particularly have a belief in deity don't particularly like the 12 steps program version of things, because it tends to be, well, it is all based on a higher power, and so it tends to be seen as deity-based or Christian-centric. So, like I said, I just happen to have a very good experience with that myself. And I will say that I was a little bit afraid going into that situation. You know, you never know how someone is going to react. Every time you bring it up to someone, there's always that little fear in the back of your mind of like, you know, what if they're not going to accept me, or what if they're going to try to get into an argument with me or something like that. And especially with someone like a counselor, you don't want that to be the case. You want this to be a good working relationship. So I admit I was a little bit wary. So what you do in these cases, or what I do, is I tend to have little sound bites that I'll use that are very simple ways of explaining things. And then based on someone's reaction to that, I know whether I can explain further. So, for example, I've talked in the past I think I talked about it in a video on my channel recently. Yeah, the most recent video that I posted on my channel is about some interactions that I recently had with people who flat out asked if I was a witch. And I said yes. And these were in a semi-professional setting and complete strangers, people that I had never talked to before that point. So you can watch that video on my channel for a little bit, for a little bit more on that subject if you want. But something that I do is, okay, so I mentioned in that video, here's my train of thought. So I mentioned in that video that sometimes when I used to work at the tea parlor, I would have customers at the tea parlor notice my jewelry, or specifically my bracelet that said Pagan Pride, and they would ask, what's a pagan, or what is pagan? What does that mean? And that's not the time or the place to have a long, drawn-out conversation, but I would give them a short, simple definition. Something like, pagan refers to a follower of paganism. Paganism is a large variety of religions that are non-Abrahamic. So one definition of it is that anything that's not Christian, Judaism, or Islam is pagan. But people have varying definitions. They tend to be polytheistic, or they might be nature-based, earth-based, things like that. So something like that might be the short introduction that I give to someone who says, what's pagan? And if someone were to ask me, what is a witch? Or what do I think, what makes me say I'm a witch? I might say, well, a witch to me is a practitioner of witchcraft, and witchcraft comes down to a belief in magic and a belief that we can change the world around us with the power of our will. And we might use spellcraft, things like lighting a candle for a specific purpose, or it might be writing something down and burning that piece of paper, and a lot of the time we consider it similar to, but maybe not the same as how other people think of prayer. And that's obviously a very simplistic definition, and there's much more to it, and there's things within that people are going to argue, but it's a very baseline definition. And then from there, so if someone immediately, following my definition of paganism says, get away from me, you horrible, evil person, then I'm going to say, okay, have a nice day, and I'm going to move on with my life. But if they say, oh, that sounds really interesting, or, oh, I think I know what you're talking about, and one of my friends has talked about something like that, so is it, and if they start asking real questions, and they're being nice about it, then I can go a little bit more in depth. If they say, well, what are you? Or if someone sees my pentacle and says, are you Wiccan? I might just say yes, if it's just a simple interaction. And then if they want to go into more detail, I might go into more about, I started as Wiccan based. I now consider myself on the path to becoming more involved in the reclaiming tradition of witchcraft based in California. I am still very much Wiccan based, but I don't only identify as a Wiccan, blah, blah, whatever. So, in a situation where it's like a counselor or a therapist, I might say, well, I follow a pagan religious path, so I'd like to talk to you about what my belief in deity is, if at all, so that we can go from there, so that you know where I'm coming from about that. And here are some other beliefs of mine that are really important to me that I think you need to know if we're going to have this kind of working relationship. And if they ask you questions, what does this mean to you? Just have a little definition for yourself ready. Write it down on a note card if it's a situation that you know you're going to be addressing this. You could even bring one of your books or bring a title of a book that if they say, oh, I don't really know much about that, where can I learn more in order to help you? Recommend a few good websites that you like that have basic information, or a book that you like. Maybe they won't pick it up, whatever, but maybe they will make that effort if they really don't know very much about it. Now, on the other hand, I know a lot of people who follow my channel, who have, been following me for years or just found me, message me about really negative experiences that they have with counselors and therapists, and it not only breaks my heart, but I think even more so, it makes me angry, because the people that I do know who are counselors, and there are folks right here on this channel who have more professional first-hand experience from the other end of these kinds of situations than I do, so hopefully we'll be hearing from them later on this topic. But I have some other personal friends in my life as well who are counselors or therapists or in that realm of work, and it's kind of similar to what I've talked about in the past with some pagans being afraid to ask their local librarian for help finding pagan books because you never know how they're going to react. And the librarian that I asked about it said, I hope that people understand that regardless of what our personal beliefs are, as a librarian, my job is to help you, no matter who you are, find what you came to find. And so I hope that people wouldn't be afraid to ask us, because we're here to help you find whatever you need. And I think of it in that same way, that all the people I know who are counselors and therapists, whether they are pagan themselves or not, they have this professional view that I am here in a role of service, that I am here to help whoever my client is. And the best way to do that is to know where that person's coming from. And so when we hear, me as someone who has gone to a counselor and who loves that kind of situation, I think it's really helpful for people, and it's really helpful for me, and I would continue seeing a counselor if it fit into my, I don't have insurance that covers it and things like that. I would still be doing that in the same capacity that I was in college when it was included with my tuition, if I could. So for me, and for my friends who are on the other end of that, when we hear people saying, oh, I went to my counselor and I told them I'm pagan and they tried to convert me to Christianity, or they tried to tell me I'm evil, or they tried to convince me that my belief in paganism is what's causing my problems in my life and that it's not helping me, we view that as pretty darn unprofessional. And this is perhaps just my opinion, but I have it. This is the opinion that I have. When I hear things like that, I think that's pretty unprofessional of them, and that a professional would try to help you no matter what, or they would say, you know what, perhaps I'm not the best person to be helping you at this time. Let me see if I can recommend someone else. Because that kind of relationship is something that has to be one of trust, and has to be meeting you where you are and then helping you take steps to get where you want to be. Opening up with, you're evil, you're wrong, let me convert you, is not going to help the person that they're trying to help. So, my best advice for something like that would be, do your best to find yourself another counselor who, whether they're pagan or not, because not everybody's going to be pagan, we are still a minority, so I don't know what the odds are truly. But there are pagan counselors out there. But there are also a lot of people out there who are very open to that kind of thing because they understand, and that's what they want to do for their clients, is they want to provide you with whatever they can do to help, and they get that as part of their job. So my best advice would be to find yourself another counselor who fits better for you. And I know that some of you have told me in the past that that's not possible because your insurance only covers one place and that place only has one counselor, or they're all like this or whatever. And so obviously I can't tell you what to do. You are the one who knows your situation the best. But my hope for you is that you will be able to find someone who can help you in all aspects and understand that your spirituality is an important part of who you are and can actually be used to help you. So I know we all talk about that a lot. How do we use our spirituality to help us through these things? So we've done some videos about that in the past, and I'm sure we'll cover it again in the future. Probably a lot of us have talked about it on our personal channels, so dig around, search around on YouTube for that. And I want to cover the last part of this question before I wrap up. How does this differ from coming out to friends and family? I actually think that coming out to people in a professional setting, when it's not, like your coworkers who you have to see every single day, because that's kind of a different thing. But when it's something like a counselor, that's an opportunity for you to, it's a place where I feel that you need to be open and honest because of the nature of that relationship. It's about helping you. And so you need to be able to be your true self with that person. And hopefully they understand that. And even if they don't, and you've got that twinge of fear before you ever say it, you don't know if they're going to accept it or not, how they're going to react. But I believe it is even more important in that kind of one-on-one working relationship that you be open about who you are and what's important to you and what you believe. And I feel that, at least for me, that has sometimes been easier because you can walk into it, especially that first meeting, think of it as an interview, kind of like, hey, I'm here to tell you who I am and what I need. I'm here to find out who you are and what your style is and whether we can work together. So this is what you need to know about me, and if it doesn't work out, I will seek help elsewhere. Whereas, right, and that's my hope. That's how I hope it goes. I know other people have specific circumstances, but that's my hope. And then on the other hand, with friends and family, that's your family. They're there all the time, unless maybe they're not at all. Again, I don't know your personal circumstances. For me, it's kind of, Some are really close and some are not at all, and that's whatever. And friends also. Your friends might be there forever. You might drift apart. But friends and family, I feel like, is especially difficult if they knew you before and they know you as one thing and they have this idea of you in their head, and then you're asking them to update that, which is not difficult for many people, but for some people, for some reason, can be extremely difficult if they have clung on to this idea that they have of you as something else, and then what you're telling them is drastically different from their idea of you. So there's a whole lot more involved in that. There's a lot more at stake, I feel like, for a lot of people. And so in a professional relationship or that kind of setting, especially counselor or therapist type thing, I think you've got a lot more in your favor. You have a lot more personal power over that situation. You can go into, this person's never met you before, probably, right? Or if this is a case where you've been working with a counselor and this is a change that you're making, I hope that you already have a close enough relationship with that person to be able to say, hey, you know, I've been doing some soul searching, I've been doing some learning, exploring, and I've found something that I think really speaks to me on a soul level, and I think we can work with this to help me move forward. I hope that that's the kind of relationship you have with someone that you've already been working with for a while. So especially if it's a first encounter, you walk in there, hello, this is me, this is who I am, do you accept this, can we work together, or not? In or out, you know? I understand, this is me talking, and I am not you, and you are not me, so please take all of this with a grain of pink Himalayan sea salt, and always do what you feel is best for you. This is only my opinion and my views based on my experiences, which again, I admit I have been very fortunate to luckily have really accepting people around me most of the time. And, but I will say that my first counselor sucked. Yeah, first one sucked. Never even bothered to tell her that I was pagan. She just clearly didn't care and didn't want to help me and was no help at all. So I'm very glad that the next year they replaced her with someone who was so much better and I was much more comfortable with. So, because again, that was a college situation. I had to go to the counselor that they had. So I lucked out. I don't know if it's luck or the universe. I don't know. But I admit that and I hope the best for all of you. And that's about all else I can do. So, I hope you all have a happy holiday weekend if you are here in the United States. I have just been so used to saying that on a daily basis, but I don't even, you know, this holiday is weird. I don't know how I feel about it, but I will be seeing my family because that's a thing that we do. So I hope you all have a good weekend, no matter where in the world you are, whether or not there is an arbitrary national holiday coming up. I hope you have a good life, and I hope you have a good working relationship with people who are there to help you in your spiritual and mental path, life, health, well-being. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next month, and until then, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye. Unedited. What?